Sam Seder and Tim Pool decided to debate one another, and there's a long history when it comes to this. From what I believe, I believe this initially started like they initially wanted to debate one another during the pandemic, but uh, I think Tim was unwilling to do it unless Sam went to his little compound, his little skate park or whatever, his skate park, office place, whatever, in person during the pandemic. And Sam was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Like, I have a family, I'm not gonna risk that. He lives in Florida, so like that would even be more riskful. It's like I'm not gonna do that. So he was like, oh, then I'm gonna ban you from my show, whatever. Like, he has a weird thing about that. Like, you can only debate him unless you show up to his compound, and even then, I believe, like, he does not, like, he will not do video call for some reason, and I think it's to try to flex his little compound a bit, try to like flex on people, being like, look how cool my office space is. We have a skate park. But yeah, I don't know how much of this we're gonna watch because this is just. I've seen some of it, and some parts of it are pretty good. The other parts of it are just kind of boring. Like the beginning part, we'll probably then skip. But then I don't know. This might be a multi-parter. Honestly, I'll probably watch this in like different sections and then make videos out of it. Like, it's 3 hours long. We'll see how much we can get through today. But this is them talking about kind of the drama going into it about whether or not Sam was banned from the show. Kind of skip through this.
And in no circumstances, I.
But you did say the words. If you committed treason, you.
Okay. So this is where the conversation kind of starts. We might watch this.
People who commit treason should get the death.
We'll probably watch this. Captions on 1.5 speed. Just because it's a long ass video.
You must have the video. No? Oh, wait a second.
And I just went, holy crap.
Let me see if I got it, because I'm pretty sure I remember this. It was in the context of you suing Kamala Harris. And you were on with Laura Loomer.
Right.
And you said the words.
Here we go.
People who get the death penalty, people who commit treason should get the death penalty.
What's the context of that sentence?
What's the context of that sentence?
So there's a clip that's 5 seconds long.
Oh, no, but I watched the whole rest of it. Like, I know you went back and forth, but it was so weird, because you should really, if you can find this and put this up, because what I found fascinating about it was that you literally did say on multiple times in that going back and forth, because apparently what happened is you got in trouble at one point with, I don't know, some streaming service about people calling for the death penalty or whatever it was. I don't know the background of that.
YouTube says you can't call for the death penalty as a legal mechanism.
Okay. And so she brought up, I think these people committed treason, they should get the death penalty. And you said...
Well, I don't know if she said, I think
I don't care what she said, really, for this sake. But I'm quite sure you said, if you commit treason, you should get the death penalty. Now,
what words are you missing from that sentence? Because it sounds like you just heard a clip.
No. I watched the whole thing.
Okay, well then,
and then at one point afterwards,
let's pause. We'll break this down. We'll break this down. Sure. Is it currently codified in law that if you commit treason, you are the penalty is death?
What do you mean by codified?
Like, is U.S. law states that the penalty for treason is death?
Not necessarily, but it is one.
It is, right. The penalty for treason is death.
What is the penalty for murder?
It varies.
It can be the death penalty.
Exactly.
So it's the exact same dynamic as treason.
Yes. So if we're talking about, in that context, people levying war against the United States, to which I said, I don't believe any of these people committed treason.
Correct.
Sedition would be...
Are those Pokemon cards behind him? I know this has nothing to deal with what's being talked about, but I'm pretty sure those are Pokemon cards. Maybe? I don't think so. Maybe. I think there's Pokemon cards behind Tim. His whole thing, this whole setup is a little weird. I mean, it looks better than its previous one, at least. But I'm just kind of letting them talk, because this is a whole thing. What Sam is essentially trying to do in this case is, if you didn't know, Tim Pool got outed. I think it's a couple months ago, maybe, as being someone who was working with this media organization called Tenet Media that was taking money from the Russian government. And so essentially, Tim was being paid by a foreign government through a media company, not to do propaganda, but they were definitely paying him because of the things that he was saying. And obviously, if you've ever seen the clip, there's a clip out there where Tim Pool very aggressively says that Ukraine is the enemy.
Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine.
So you could probably wonder why the Russian government would love for him to continue on with whatever he's saying. But what Sam is trying to get to at this point is essentially saying, since Tim Pool essentially, in a way, committed treason by taking money from a foreign government, whether unwittingly or not, or at least like agreed to take the money. And he will try to like bring up later that like Sam's no different because there are ways that like the Russian government could put ads on his videos, which would directly pay him. But even then, it's not like Sam signing up for that. We'll get into that. It's a whole weird thing. But like what Sam's trying to set up for is basically like, you think the crime, like the punishment for treason should be the death penalty. Has your stance changed on that since essentially being outed for committing treason?
Be trying to undermine or cause damage to the government.
Correct. That's not the issue.
Right.
And that's
so
the thing, like,
the context of that conversation.
Even this will get brought up for a good chunk of it, but like it's a little unclear if Tim knew where the money was coming from. But then again, it's just like, did you not wonder and ask where the money was coming from? Because it was like a very substantial amount of money. It was a lot of money. And you didn't ask where they were getting this money from? Like, they definitely had backers. They definitely had people who were, paying, like sending them money. Were you not asking who was sending them money? I think one person did, who was a part of the whole media organization, and I believe it was Dave Rubin.
Conversation is one. I don't agree with the death penalty. And in no circumstances.
You did say
I
the
think
words.
Benny Johnson was
If
maybe
you committed
involved
treason,
with it.
you should get the death penalty.
Okay, so
I know
once
there
again,
were three people.
do you
Sam
not
was
you
one
agree
of
if
them.
someone commits murder,
Dave
they
Rubin
should
was the
get
other,
the
and
death
I think
penalty?
Benny Johnson was
I
the
agree
other.
with that.
Right. And
But you did say if they commit treason, they should get the death penalty.
So if we're talking about the penalty for levying war against the country, whether you want it to or not, if a judge sentences someone to death, should they get the death penalty?
If a judge, I don't
What?
think people should get the death penalty under any circumstances.
If someone is shooting at another person, should they be shot at and killed?
That's different than someone shooting someone in an act of self-defense, if they were getting shot at, is a lot different than a court proceeding ending with the judge dishing out the punishment of the death penalty. That's different. One of them is a long legal procedure that takes place where all the evidence is gathered and, the parties in question make their statements. That's a long, drawn-out thing where people have to think about it. The other one is a reflex based off a survival instinct.
If someone's shooting at another person, should they be shot at?
Yes.
And killed?
If someone is committing an act of violence and actively, is it within the legal rights of a person to return with lethal force?
You mean self-defense?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Right now, whether you want it to or not, if someone robs a liquor store, should they go to jail?
Should they go to jail?
Under the current laws, regardless of your opinions, should the police arrest the person?
Should the people arrest the person for robbing a liquor store?
Yes.
I mean, I think they should. Yes.
Do you think in literally every single circumstance, then, no matter what happens, if someone commits a robbery, they should be arrested?
I mean, I suppose there could be extenuating circumstances, but yes, if you commit a crime, you should be arrested.
So the clarification that I'm trying to make, it's not about, I don't think there's any real reason to try and go back and parse semantics. The concept was, if people are levying war against the United States, such as we're on the battlefield somewhere in Iraq or whatever, right?
Wait, this whole thing was about treason, where you were saying that.
Do you want me to explain the ideas, or do you want to just go in circles? I don't understand.
Well,
It seems like the only person going in circles is, well, I don't even think he's trying to go in circles. I think he's just trying to, push Sam in a different direction of being like, don't think about the thing that I say and how it contradicts to everything I'm going to say. Or how I'm going to try to, logic my way out of this by saying, with the statement that I think anyone who commits treason should get the death penalty.
Why don't you just to address what I'm talking about
trying
instead
to.
of talking
You
about
interrupted
war? All right, go ahead, please.
Treason is levying war,
Treason is levying war?
or providing aid to the enemy of the United States in a time of war.
Well, it also, you can be, I mean, there's been people who have been charged with treason when we're not in an active war, but yes, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, but however you want to parse this, treason is a legal charge against somebody, and there are multiple potential penalties for that, one of which includes capital punishment. And the
just for the sake of clarity, because in the show we're talking about, we're not talking about specifics of someone may or may not be wrongly charged. If you're asking me why I would say something like should be, it's rooted in this: treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them
Yeah, I was just kind of reading that. Oh shit!
aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses of the same overt act or confession in open court. So the issue at hand was when we were talking.
Wait, hold on. Let's go back to this little thing. Why do they have a camera on the third chair that's empty? Were they supposed to have a third person on and they set it up like that, or did they just not change their little setup here?
Treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses of the same overt act or confession in open court. So the issue at hand was when we were talking, and I said, I don't think any of these people committed treason. I don't think anything they've done is worthy of death. I don't agree with the death penalty. The return is, but what if they're levying war against us? And then someone decides their life should be forfeit.
I watched that video, and in fact, I remember this now, actually. We were going over the ridiculousness of your lawsuit, and I said, Tim says he doesn't agree with the death penalty. That's fine. And then they played more where you say, if you've committed treason, you should get the death penalty.
It's almost like Tim Pool doesn't believe in anything. And that's like, he's so stupid. He really is the perfect course of how a moron, as long as they just say everything that like right wingers love, they can get a career. Because like Tim Pool has seemingly no discernible opinions on anything and just changes it based on who's around him. Like here in this debate, you will see Tim Pool multiple times try to like, I guess, soften some of his opinions so that Sam can't attack him or debate him that strongly. But like Sam knows what he's talking about. Sam does this for a living. He loves politics. Like, what? There's like with this one conference that people have been bringing up in defense of this, being like, Tim Pool is essentially an idiot. He doesn't do much research. He doesn't do much of this. He probably does like a little bit on his off time, but a lot of his political career has essentially been reading headlines, making guesses, and then accidentally proving himself wrong multiple times. There's a great video that Somewhere News did on Tim Pool that covers the entire thing that you should definitely watch if you want to learn more about Tim Pool. But that's essentially what his career is, in a sense. But like Sam Seder lives this. He lives this political commentator life. There's like one conference that people have been bringing up in reference to this, of being like, why did you think you could ever successfully debate Sam Seder? Like, he goes to this conference for fun. I believe what it was. Let me look it up.
The interesting thing is, then I watched, hold on, let me finish. And
do you
then,
want to do a drama circle jerk, or do you want to actually talk about the ideas of the death penalty and what should or should not happen?
no, I think I personally am against the death penalty. I think
So let's
you
talk
are
about that.
maybe against the death penalty.
I'm 100% against death penalty.
But what I found fascinating, it was as if you watch that video as it goes further along, and maybe you can release it. I don't know if it's behind a paywall. What I watched it somewhere, so I know it exists. Maybe it was on Rumble. And if you go along, it's almost like you catch yourself and you realize, like, wait a second, I'm against the death penalty. So no, you shouldn't get capital punishment. And that's one of the things that I think, like, in terms of like that, I've always found fascinating about you. And that there's actually a great video by Tim Toast on how you vacillate between different political ideas as a way of like maintaining a certain brand.
What is the brand?
Well, I don't not exactly sure what you think the brand is, but
Here's the challenge. If I post a joke on X that is like over the top, for instance, I tweeted Kamala Harris is like Hitler and Stalin times 200, and she's going to start 800 wars. That was actually written about in various liberal outlets as if it was a fact statement. And so I'm sitting here being like, can they not tell? Well, there's Poe's law. I get it. Sometimes they don't. But the issue at hand right now is just semantics. So instead of saying like, well,
dude, we're in the communication business. Like, our words are important. Now, listen, I certainly understand.
Yeah, it is pretty fun. It's pretty funny being like, you're a commentator, man. Semantics is the whole thing. Like, you need to know how you word what you're saying. Like, you talk, that's what you do for a living. You talk. What do you think was going to happen?
People misinterpreting a tweet. Believe me, I've been there.
I will just say this for the sake of clarity. Right now, regardless of my opinions on law, should the law be that someone will receive the death penalty, then they should receive it. I oppose it.
But it doesn't necessarily, the punishment for treason is not necessarily the death penalty any more than it is with murder.
All right, so let's just try.
Why would you ever say, if you're against the death
once
penalty?
again, misconception I'm trying to get past, so let me explain.
Okay.
In the circumstance where someone has committed a death-worthy trespass, I oppose the death penalty. I would advocate against it. We recently had a big case where there were two instances where people were put to death. One guy, the family even said it shouldn't happen. They had to deal with the prosecutor, and it still happened. And that was, I believe it was, who was that? That was Missouri. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people watching my show were quite outraged that a family would say no. But the issue at hand is I don't assert myself over the rest of the country in law, which means if the mechanism of the courts is as such, that's what should happen. I will fight against it. That's the semantic misunderstanding.
Oh,
So
all right.
let's just put it like this.
Because you were so offended. I mean, the reason why I thought I was here was because you were so offended that I
So
said you were
essentially
against.
his argument is that, oh, I'm against the death penalty, but, you know, if it happens, it happens. But I'm going to fight against it. But, you know, if it happens, it happens. So it's nothing? He doesn't really have an opinion.
the death penalty.
You said I was for it.
For it, and I got confused when you said someone should get the death penalty
Under a mechanism
for
of
treason.
law that I oppose.
Well, you never said those words.
But that was the whole conversation.
No, actually, it wasn't.
Literally was.
We can play it.
But I mean, look, how about we just, instead of going back and forth and saying it was the show where these things said, we lay it on the table, there it is.
Okay, there it
Death
is.
penalty should be opposed.
We agree on that.
The government is a failed arbiter of who should live or die. This mechanism doesn't work at an institutional level.
I don't know that anybody is a arbiter of who should live or die, but yes.
Excuse me. There is some context that is more challenging, such as if a man pointed a weapon at your children, would you decide that he should die?
I mean, if someone pointed a weapon at my children, I would attempt to do whatever I needed to do to stop them. But that's different than,
Including lethal force.
I mean, if that's what it took, of course.
So that is you making the decision that you will take action which may lead to the death of an individual.
Oh yeah, I mean I would suffer the consequence.
So apparently the conference I was trying to talk about that people have been bringing up in reference to this is the TORTS conference, or the TORT conference, a unique learning opportunity designed to help attorneys achieve better results with their tort cases from pre-trial to summation. So it's like legal stuff. And this is a conference that Sam Seder goes to for fun. Like, he does it for fun. He doesn't need to do it, but he wants to, and he likes to go do it. Like this guy lives and breathes talking about politics. He loves to do it. So I don't understand why Tim Pool thought that this would be a good idea, trying to debate him when he has been shown multiple times to be wrong about stuff that he claims to be very knowledgeable about.
But I don't believe in general that in capital punishment. I mean, that's not capital punishment. That's
I agree. I'm
That's
just saying
self-defense or
in certain circumstances, a person will decide someone.
Like we have a man who loves to learn, who loves to just soak in information and just learn about, politics, versus a guy who literally doesn't think that education is good. This is a man who is a high school dropout, and there's nothing wrong with that, inherently so. Like, if you want to drop out and join a trade, just go straight into the workforce, shit like that, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that Tim Pool is a political commentator who is a high school dropout who has multiple times, well, at least one time from what I've seen, I believe it was on the Patrick Bet-David podcast, Valuetainment. I was very valuetained listening to that, where Tim Pool essentially said that he thinks that high school and education as a whole is essentially a scam. And this is a guy who is in a line of work that requires you to learn more in order to understand what you're talking about. But he thinks that it's a waste of time. So this is coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb right here.
Maybe about to die. And there's other issues, of course, like whether to render medical aid is a different circumstance. If someone is already dying, then there's if someone is in peril but you can't save them. But in terms of a human being making an active decision to end someone's life, there are many circumstances where someone will decide that they are the arbiter of that decision. Police officers do it every day. Soldiers do it every day, and often regular people. We have the Penny trial in New York right now, where they've got the trial going on for the Daniel Penny in New York, where he put that guy in the chokehold and the guy died. He made that decision at that point.
He killed the guy.
He did, and he made that decision for whatever reason. I am going to apply this technique to this man. May result in death. So at a certain point, someone makes that choice. The question then is, do we agree that the choice was necessary or that they were backed into a corner? And that's a difficult decision. So I would just put it this way. I think in a perfect world...
I mean, the stance in that case was no, it wasn't. But again, that's different from having someone in a hold, having someone contained, essentially, and then being in a gunfight. That's different. And again, it kind of goes against his whole thing of being like, oh, I don't believe in the death penalty, but if it happens, it happens. If death happens, it happens. No big deal.
It has nothing to do with capital punishment, though.
It's about whether someone chooses someone else to die.
If you're a political commentator and your whole stance on this very serious topic is, it's complicated, doesn't that say a lot about you as a commentator? Your level of commentating? If you're just like, things complicated. I don't know. Talk about it and voice your opinion on it. Maybe it won't be so complicated when you actually come at this topic with like facts instead of, I don't know, just spouting whatever bullshit you think is best at the time.
Right, but that has nothing to do with capital punishment.
And I guarantee you, if the person he was sitting across from was a right-winger, he would be more brazen about this stuff. He would be like, yeah, man, I love the death penalty. I love it, man. But the reason why he's doing with this is I think Tim is at least trying to seem a little more centrist for Sam's audience in a way to try to get more, like, some conversion over there. But I think with the way that Sam talks about Tim, I think a fair amount of his audience will probably see past this anyways. And it just comes off as disingenuous, especially with how Sam breaks it down. Because from what I've seen, he does not allow Tim to get away with anything without being like, well, this contradicts this, so you believe this?
Capital punishment is definitionally a punishment that is put out by the government, as opposed to, an individual's decision as to whether or not they're going to apply lethal force to somebody. It has nothing to do with it. You would never say that Penny provided capital punishment to that guy on the subway because...
I was making that argument.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with capital punishment.
Just in the sense that someone's making a decision over someone's death. And the question being, in the case of self-defense, I agree there are circumstances. And in the case of capital punishment,
one is at the time conducted by an individual person, and the other is a long legal procedure that is conducted by an institution. It's not the same whatsoever, outside of the fact that both may result in death. Like, if that's the only similarity, then is that the same thing as like a drunk driver driving? If they may hit someone, is that the same thing then? Because they could kill a person? Is that the same? Or is it the same of someone willingly going bungee jumping? Maybe the equipment they brought isn't that safe. They could fall and die. Is that the same as the death penalty? Because there is a likely result of death. All right, I need to get something to drink. I'll let this play out.
There are no circumstances. Okay. I don't believe there's a reality where the government has successfully subdued an individual who they are no longer a threat, and then they just decide 20 years later, now let's kill the person. That makes no sense to me.
No, I agree. I do not believe that we should have capital punishment. I do not believe in the death penalty.
How do we stop it?
Well, I mean, there have been times in the past where we've come close, I think. Sadly, I think because of all of the ginned up stuff about crime in this country over the past couple of years, I think we're moving in the wrong direction. I think the Democrats actually took it out of their platform this year. That they're against the capital punishment. It is a problem. There is a cost associated with the attempts to scare people about crime in this country, and that's one of the costs, that we move further away from some type of positive public policy.
4% of death row inmates are likely innocent. And that means at an institutional level, people in this country accept 4 in 100 people will be murdered by the state, unjustly killed, for a sense of security. I reject that outright.
Yeah, I mean, I think both in terms of efficacy, but even in terms of, I think if you feel that there is a situation wherein, without a threat to anybody, right? I mean, these people are all in jail, that there is a justification to kill someone in cold blood, then I think it just becomes a negotiation as to when it's not.
You know what really gets me too is what I hear from a lot of people is, what about when you know? You've seen on video they're harming a child or they're doing something, and it's funny because in a circumstance where an individual literally witnesses a crime happening, it's easy to say, sure, we can, like if you're out in public and you see someone committing an egregious crime that is going to cause great bodily harm or death. But why does that justify an institutional, national level mechanism by which the government can decide that someone dies? I think it comes down to 12 people walk into a room, someone they've never met before points to a person they've never met and they say, trust me, kill him. And these people are like, well, I guess. I think that's insanity.
No, I agree. Yeah. I mean, you brought up the Penny thing. And I think, that's why it's even that much more egregious, in my opinion, his killing of that man, because I don't believe in that situation there was any type of threat that justified holding this guy in a chokehold for that many minutes at all, frankly, for that matter.
What do you think, the penalty should be? Like, do you think, they're charging him, I think, with negligent? Is it negligent homicide? I'm not sure.
At the very least, I would imagine manslaughter. But, in generally, as a rule, I don't really parse out court cases. I mean, if there's a charge, as a matter of public policy, there are instances where I think that people should be charged. But beyond that, then I just, I didn't even watch the OJ trial. I'm
curious about your thoughts on this story. This is from NBC News from 2021. Police say riders didn't help women raped on train because of the bystander effect. Explain why. Does the bystander effect explain why? Philadelphia police said riders did not call 911, instead held their cell phones up in direction of the assault. You know, in a circumstance like this was a huge story. 40 minutes, a woman was harassed by a stranger on a public train and then raped while bystanders just watched. What would you do? Like, what do you think a person should do in a circumstance like that?
At the very least, I would call 911.
That's great. Yeah, right. No one did.
And over the course of 40 minutes, I mean, I'm not familiar with this story, but if I watched someone being assaulted,
Raped.
and then or raped, yes, I would intervene. I would push that person away. I would attempt to stop them from raping that person.
I think anybody should.
What has that got to do with this?
Well, we've got two extremes, I suppose, right? With Neely, you've got a woman who said that she felt like her life was in danger, is one of the witnesses.
Well, we've seen that. I mean, there were people all around there, and the idea that she felt like her life was in danger. I mean, A, she's not communicating that to the guy, to Neely. B, it was quite clear. It was quite clear that, you know, I don't know, minute 2, minute 3, minute 4, that this person is not going to end up killing that person. I would imagine that if this guy attempted to assault her anymore, Neely could have pushed him away, or they could have held them down. But a chokehold is a lethal thing, and he held it for minutes.
Do you think that you would wait until the woman was being raped before you would intervene?
You know, probably not.
But how would you know then if the guy's like a threat, unless he's actively committing harm?
Well, I mean, if he's like,
I mean, what Sam is saying here isn't that you know, there's no, like, someone shouldn't get involved. They're just saying, like, you don't need to apply a fucking chokehold on the guy and kill him. That's it. Like, I'm very much on Sam's side, where it's like, no, like the death penalty, or, you know, killing someone, unless it is like your life at risk. Like, if it literally is a death or life situation, like, yeah, if someone's shooting at you and you're shooting back at your own protection, if it's like a case of self-defense, then yeah, if the, you know, attacker dies in that case, and like, yeah, that's understandable. I'm not like saying, oh, we should throw that person in, the person who defended themselves, in jail. Like, that would be idiotic. But in this case, like, when there is no threat of death to any of the parties involved, then yeah, I'm going to be like, that person doesn't need to die. Mostly because I do have a big faith in rehabilitation. I believe anybody can be rehabilitated. I don't think that our current system, in terms of, like, you know, our current criminal system, favors that at all. I don't think it leaves a lot of doors open to rehabilitation, and that's a big problem that I think faces our current system. But that doesn't mean we just get to kill people just because our system is inherently broken.
Actively committing harm, there's you know, I would assume, I'm not familiar with that story, but I would assume that it would start out where the guy is physically assaulting her, holding her down or whatnot. And I think at that point I would go and intervene. But I think the problem in this instance, and again, like, you know, the guy's been charged. That's basically where my interest, you know, I move on to other things. But in an instance where you're putting someone in a chokehold, which again, he's trained. He's a
Marine, right?
Yeah, he must know this is a lethal thing. You know, you're putting someone
like,
in a chokehold
so much
for 5-6
worse.
minutes.
Like, being just a, you know, mo schmo and putting a chokehold on someone, and then that chokehold resulting in death, that's just kind of like a, what is it? Not ignorance, it's just not understanding the action you're partaking in. And in that case, like, if your first instinct is, oh, I'm gonna go stop this person, which is the morally right thing to do, and if you're like, oh, I'm gonna do this to them, if you don't know how to properly do that in a way that isn't lethal, or you don't have any understanding of how to properly do it, like if this again was just some Joe Schmo putting a chokehold on them and it resulted in death, then yeah, that's definitely your fault. But like, this is also, but it's also kind of worse when it's someone who understands it. Like, yeah, he understood how to properly do a chokehold in the way that would kill someone, and he did it.
I think that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have no idea. You know, I see both stories, and it seems like
you could have just shoved the person off. You could have held them in a way, you know, put them in a hold that wouldn't result in their death. I don't know, like a full Nelson, something that limits a way for them to escape or to harm anybody else. I don't think a chokehold is necessarily the best thing to do. I mean, there was that one case in where I believe it was Hulk Hogan who put like a TV host in a chokehold, and it resulted in the guy passing out and getting. I don't think he got brain damage. Maybe he did, but I believe he got a concussion.
Both on the ends.
He was
right?
bleeding from the head.
Jordan Neely didn't do anything. People may have claimed they felt threatened. In this regard, it's a woman who was quite literally raped. In one instance, you have intervention.
People aren't even calling 911. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, that's absurd.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, like the fact that like nobody called 911 is obviously absurd, but like I don't know what this has to do with like death penalty. Like, okay, that's just a bad sign of where we are as a society. In all honesty,
Story.
I think there's.
I
don't think you have to have too nimble or nuanced of a brain to say there's a difference between watching someone get raped and not calling 911 and putting someone in a chokehold for 6 minutes. I feel like there's a.
You can these 911.
Yeah, these are pretty wide disparities. This is not.
That's what I mean, like on the extreme ends.
Right.
You get these stories.
yeah, like
where
I don't like nobody. But I don't understand where he's trying to put this in terms of extreme ends. Like, I don't think anybody on the left would look at that situation, would look at the people just video recording it, not calling 911, and be like, yeah, those people are in the right.
where it's no intervention to the extreme degree and then intervention to a person's death.
Right.
And it's like maybe we don't see the stories of any kind of in between because they're not sensational, right? Like I'm sure something happened on a train recently in New York where someone like the guy was getting violent, he got shoved. Everything stopped. You know what I mean? No one, NBC News is ever going to carry the story because there's nothing extreme about it. And so we only ever get these edge cases which put people on one side or the other.
And it only perpetuates like this crime panic where we all think that crime is on the rise when it's literally not. But the thing is that I don't know. He's a weird case, but people like Tim benefit off that crime panic. Like, that's just inherently true. And I do believe the crime panic does come up in this. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, stuff
So
happens.
I like how he has a little segment here where he's just like, we only hear about these like few extreme cases, but then goes on to be like, no, crime is up.
It's in the subway all the time.
New York's been getting pretty wild. I suppose it's relative to the amount of crime, but
like I was saying, especially in New York, it's not that up consistently.
And getting wild in what way?
there were, I think, last year, like 25 people were pushing in front of trains.
I mean, I can tell you that crime in New York City is, down still around historic
Like, just
lows.
then, him being like, oh, it's so crazy, 25 people were trying to trains. Like, yeah, that is crazy. But think about how many people use the train on a day-to-day basis. Like, when you look at that amount, like, think about how many people in New York City, use the train on a daily basis. And only 25 people got pushed in front of trains 1 year. Okay, like, that's a pretty low statistic. That's like a percentage of a percentage. Like, yeah, it's still terrible. I'm not like being like, who cares? Like, yeah, it's still terrible that happened to people, but it's not like a wild thing. It's not a wild common thing that's like naturally occurring.
I mean, I'm old, so I remember New York in the late 80s.
But I think that, like, I don't know. To me, the way that is framed, because it's not just Tim who frames stuff like that. I think the reason why the crime panic carries a lot of weight, because I think some people can't comprehend the amount of people in a certain area compared to crimes. Like, yeah, 25 people pushed in front of trains sounds like a lot to someone who probably lives in a space that isn't widely populated or doesn't even live near people. But when you think about how many people live in New York, are surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people, it's not that much, is it? In a span of a year? It's not that much.
I mean, it's
Wow.
It's like
3 years ago. Sorry, I was wrong. Yeah, it was in 2022. I think it was.
Oh, well, I mean, listen,
25
during
people.
COVID, we had a once-in-a-lifetime event, hopefully, knock on wood, and a lot of things got messed up, but crime is back down. The only crime that has gone up, which is fascinating, and for all of the BS that we heard over the past couple of years about, shoplifting and smash and grab and all that, do you know what the one major crime that is up, the most statistically? It's actually shoplifting. Shoplifting went up in 2023, and it is now, because it went down during COVID. So as much as we heard, and I know you've talked about this quite a bit, and I think it's been misrepresented in a lot of respects, that all of the shoplifting was up and people are gone mayhem, it's crazy. It was actually below where it was in 2019, and it is now back up to where it was in 2019.
I think.
And because COVID was, screwed up with our society so much, but again, you ask me, why are we going the wrong direction with capital punishment? I would say it is the absolute BS that has been shoveled I don't watch your show enough to know, although I've seen people on here who, when Emma was on, who promote this idea that there was like this explosion of crime. And in fact, what ends up happening is that, yes, during COVID, there was a spike. And now we're back down. And the only thing that is back at 2019 levels is actually shoplifting, because it had gone down and it's gone back up because we're back to normal.
So I'm trying to pull up the Marshall Project. This is a good one. So we had these, this was the story that happened, and this is what's a cause for contention. The FBI released crime data showing that crime had gone down, and during the presidential debates, David New York fact-checked Donald Trump saying actually crime is down. However, recently the FBI released new crime data showing that actually it was up. It was up, I believe, 4.5%.
When? What year?
The year prior, 2021.
That it was up.
Yeah. So the latest data that we
But
have.
we knew, no, it was actually 2020.
No, they said crime was down. Well, let's go back to that, because even he fucks it up.
Back at 2019 levels is actually shoplifting, because it had gone down and it's gone back up because we're back to normal.
So I'm trying to pull up the Marshall Project. This is a good one. So we had these, this was the story that happened, and this is what's a cause for contention. The FBI released crime data showing that crime had gone down, and during the presidential debates, David New York fact-checked Donald Trump saying actually crime is down. However, recently the FBI released new crime data showing that
FBI releases crime stats months after the fact. This new crime tracker is trying to be more timely, and the FBI too.
actually it was up. It was up, I believe, 4.5%.
Oh, he tried to run past it.
And what year?
The year prior, 2021.
That it was up.
Yeah. So the latest data that we
But
have.
we knew, no, it was actually 2022. We knew, we knew, yeah, it was 2022.
I'm sorry, the increase from 2021.
Yeah, during COVID, in the wake of COVID, 2022 was up because the data reporting was not complete. But if you look at 2023 data, which is now they have got enough of the police departments online that 94 point, I don't know, something of the country is covered.
Like, yeah, they fact checked him, and he was like, "Oh no, crime is up." Like, no, crime is down. That's the thing. Crime is down. And then Tim was trying to be like, "Well, look at this. When crime was up, it's like." Okay, that's not what he was talking about. Like, now crime is down. He's trying to reference a previous year, like 2022, and be like, no, this shows that crime was up. It's like, yeah, it was up. Now it's down.
You will find that crime is down in 2023.
So do you think? I think one of the issues
we had a rise because of COVID, and now it's dropping back down. But again, let's also be clear on this. If you compare 1990 crime with today, it's basically like this. It's just straight down on that.
You want to know something interesting? You know what one of the biggest factors in the decline in murder is? Cell phones. So back in the day, in the 90s, if somebody got stabbed, somebody had to run to a payphone to try and call 911, and that created a massive gap between first response and medical treatment. And so around the time cell phones came out, you see a massive drop in murder charges and homicides. People immediately started thinking like, wow, crime is down. And it's like, well, no, look at the crime data. It is down, it is going down, but it's not the same. There's a decline in crime and a sharp decline in murder because now people were instantly calling 911 and first responders were arriving on scene much
Okay.
more quickly. So that's
okay. But also the other part was, yeah, I mean, that's interesting.
Crime's been going down.
Crime has been going down. I mean,
That doesn't exactly help your case, Tim. When you look at crime statistics, a lot of like these fear mongers, like these news networks, they love to show it over the last few years to be like, oh yeah, crime might be down, but it's not by much, or they'll exaggerate a certain, or they'll like, switch up the graphs to make it look like crime is up when it's not. The problem is that when you look at crime as a whole throughout a long period of time, it's down. Overall, crime has lessened over the years. But people love to fearmonger. I mean, this is the same thing that I covered with Jake Paul when he was trying to be like, oh, look at all these migrants coming in. Like, oh, like over 600,000 criminal migrants have come across the border. And it's like, okay, was it this year or was it over a long period of time?
There's a lot of theories about it. I happen to think it's a function of lead, to be honest with you.
I agree, lead and gasoline.
Lead and gasoline and lead regulation. It's another example of strong government regulation bringing about benefits that we couldn't even imagine.
I agree. What do you think? I don't understand the mechanism by which lead made crime happen. I saw the reports, though, where...
Well, I mean, lead is a neurotoxin, and if you have brain damage, you're more likely to be maybe violent or antisocial.
That's crazy. Like in the 70s when we had leaded gasoline and it's just pumping out of all these cars, people are effectively having some kind of effect on their brain.
It aggregates, and so if you are living in areas that had a lot of lead paint, hadn't been remediated, and on top of that, you're getting gasoline that's in the air, or I should say lead that is, in the air because of gas, that accumulates in your brain and it creates neurotoxin. That's why we have that problem in Flint, Michigan, with the lead poisoning. We have a lot of children, who have special needs, and there's data. I mean, this is, it's very difficult to assess this stuff, but there's data that shows that about 20 years after lead gasoline is outlawed, or lead in gasoline is outlawed, you see a precipitous drop in crime that's happened both internationally and in this country.
What do you think about phthalates? Are you familiar?
No.
So plastic chemicals leaching into our food.
Oh, yeah.
Even these cans. So I'm going to give a shout out to Liquid Death. Look at me, I guess. So Liquid Death is water in cans, and it says death to plastic. But every single aluminum can is lined with plastic. So it's all leaching into our, even these spindrifts. They say they're endocrine disruptors. So they're affecting people's hormone regulation, hormone balance. This could lead to, depending on the study, hormone imbalance could lead to like emotional disturbances or dissociative or like identity issues.
This is one of the reasons why, since we are a couple of days away from an election, why I think it's so important to make sure that Donald Trump is not in a position to appoint any more Supreme Court justices. I mean, the damage has been done, but it could be rectified, because one of the things that the Supreme Court has done in its assault on what is known as the Chevron doctrine and deference is it will, over time, inhibit the ability of something like the EPA or the USDA or the FDA from assessing in real time that there is a problem with certain products that is poisoning our environment or poisoning our people, and it will inhibit their ability to address it, because we don't know in the future, and certainly if, what chemicals, we discovered this over time, right? We didn't know this when plastics are fantastic. And then we start to realize there's these PFAS, there's these things that you mentioned, maybe in the context of fracking, there are certain things leaching into water, but you probably know that you can't just there's no, I test water and then all the bad stuff comes back on the test sheet. You must look for specific things. Well, what the Supreme Court has done is inhibited, and this actually is even a problem for investors like the SEC and other agencies. They have inhibited the ability of these agencies to do their work as scientists, as financial regulators, find problems that exist that were not contemplated by Congress and act upon them. Because Congress doesn't have the ability, to act on every single or anticipate every single substance that may be a problem for people, or high
fructose corn syrup.
I mean, that's also a problem. That was under the Nixon administration. They decided they wanted to increase the amount of money that expendable money that people had. So they decided to subsidize corn and make all the food cheaper. But
isn't it weird how the high fructose corn syrup thing happens? They subsidize corn, so then these researchers are like, corn's so cheap now because it's being paid for by by taxpayers that we can produce. It's actually difficult to make high fructose corn syrup. It's more expensive than sugar, but the government subsidy has resulted in
100%. It's also the filler in all our foods.
Yeah. I was reading something recently that said that the high colon cancer rate among young people is due to emulsifiers. They're using like gellan gum and guar gum and these things in dairy products. So, or not even just dairy products, but to make it seem like it's fatty. And so you're actually just eating this gum stuff that gunks up your insides. I don't know how you appropriately regulate or deal with things like that, because it's like you're saying, we don't know what it's going to
do. Don't vote for people who deregulate these systems. That's the thing. Tim Pool is objectively on the side of people who want these systems to be deregulated, despite seemingly wanting these systems to be regulated because he understands the problem with them. But he's also this libertarian right-wing guy who's just everything should be privately controlled. So that's why I'm very harsh on him not really having an opinion on anything, seemingly, because it doesn't really seem like he has an opinion on anything, because all of his opinions just kind of contradict themselves at a certain point.
Until we have all this data and research for a long period of time.
I mean, we could regulate against it. I wasn't quite a fan of Michael Bloomberg, but one of the things he did was, I think it was during the Bloomberg administration, they were polysaturated fats, I think it was, that were outlawed.
I know at some point they yell at each other, and I want to see that. Okay, we might skip to a certain point in this when they talk about abortion, because that is kind of what I want to cover, because this is when it really gets heated to a certain point, because I think the only thing outside of this that they cover is they do try to talk about the tenant media thing, and Tim basically tries to weasel his way out of it, of being like, well, the Russian government could put ads on your videos, so it's not that big of a deal, essentially. But the thing is that if that were to happen, that would be a problem on YouTube. Tim seemingly unwittingly just accepted a bunch of money without knowing where that money was coming from. So I don't know. But we're not gonna get into that. There's also like Sam being like, why are you so obsessed with civil war, with starting a civil war? And Tim's just like, well, I'm not obsessed with starting a civil war, even though I mentioned civil war so many times, like how there's gonna be a civil war. I just take it from these people's opinion pieces, not actual statistics, just opinion pieces. That's his academic backing of why he believes a civil war is going to happen, because other people think a civil war is going to happen. So let's just skip to abortion. This is like the last 40 minutes. We might finish this off. But yeah, we're just going to skip that because like it's just a lot of other shit that I don't really care all that much to get into.
But I do want to talk to you about abortion. You want to do
Sure.
10 minutes?
Sure.
Abortion?
I was thinking about like slowing this down, but maybe we're just going to keep it here.
What are your thoughts on where we're currently at? Like, what do you think we should be doing?
What do I think we should be doing? Well, we should at the very least be reestablishing Roe v. Wade statutorily.
I think the Supreme Court was wrong, and I believe that the Fourth Amendment requires that the federal government make a ruling specifically on the issue of abortion. What that becomes, I don't know, but the concept of personhood needs to be ruled on one way or the other. So this is not a state issue. Trump is wrong about that.
But the personhood should no. I don't believe in personhood in the womb.
Right. So you think the Supreme Court should say no personhood in the womb?
Definitely.
I think the Supreme Court needs to answer one way or the other.
Well, I mean, it would put some things to rest. I don't think they're going to do that.
So Tim isn't in favor of states' rights over this, which good. That's a stupid issue, but he's like, okay, either it should be allowed all the way or it should be banned all the way. So again, not really. He doesn't really have a formulated opinion on this, I guess. Also, I'm gonna be right back. I need to pick me up some food.
2 hours later.
I mean,
Trump is saying it should be a state's issue. I believe that is absolutely incorrect.
no, I think we had an individual right that existed in this country for 50 years, and it was rolled back. We've never had anything like that whatsoever. I think it's a right that when taken away, deprives people who have babies their sovereignty over their own body, and it's both an economic issue and a personal liberty issue.
Do you think there should be restrictions
on abortion? Yeah. I mean, the problem with restrictions, like for instance, we say only in the case of, let's say, a danger to a woman, or a woman's life, is that is extremely difficult to assess where that line is. And we've seen this. 2 women have died at least in Texas as a function of the abortion ban that they have there. We also know that infant mortality in the wake of the Texas thing, because there's been studies on this, increased 15% in the wake of the abortion ban there. So in general, I would say that restrictions are in practice not viable, not doable, because you end up costing women their lives. I think that to the extent that I would have restrictions, I think you need a medical provider to provide abortions, in that go past the maybe midway through the second trimester.
But, do you think that elective abortion should be available up to 9 months?
If it is I think that is the safest route for women if it is done by a medical provider. Yeah.
Elective. I asked elective, to be clear.
Elective.
Meaning no reason given, no medical issues, just a woman saying, you know what,
I've carried this baby for 8.5 months and I've changed my mind.
Well,
yeah, that doesn't happen. That's so stupid. Like most, if not all, abortions that happen in the 3rd trimester are because of medical reasons. Nobody carries a baby for 8.5 months and it's just like, I don't want it anymore.
It's a little crass way of putting it. I think some women are going through some serious crises in their lives and they may make a decision that's a bit more than just they've changed their mind. Like, for instance, where a woman is being battered by her husband and then she realizes at month 6 that if she has this kid, he's going to continue to beat and harm the child and she can't stay with him or something.
Well, I think, I'm not going to assess people's reasons for having an abortion. It's not really my business. But I think that having restrictions ends up costing women's lives. And so I would, on balance, not have restrictions outside of, like, obviously, like, particularly as you get further into the pregnancy, requirements about medical certified medical providers.
So let's say you have a scenario, a woman goes to a Planned Parenthood, 6 months pregnant, and she just says, I don't want to explain it. I just would like to get an abortion. Is that she should be allowed? There should be just medical professionals say, we're going to do it. We're not going to ask you why.
I think it's okay to explore it and get a sense, as you would for any type of, like, medical procedure.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like, nobody's gonna. You can't just go into a hospital and be like, hey, I want leg surgery. Why? Because I just want it. Like, you have to explain why you want it.
Well, I think that there's an obligation within the context of like ethical practice of medicine to
Not just terminate a baby at 6 months without reason.
Well, no, I'm not saying that they should adjudicate this, but I don't think that like
but that's not even a restriction. That's just how medical procedures, happen. Like he's saying, there's a medical process. That's not necessarily a restriction. Like, a doctor asking you why you want leg surgery, why you want heart surgery isn't a restriction. It's procedure.
the necessarily medical providers are going to be just like, hop up here, we'll just do this right now. I mean, I think there are procedures in which they do it, but essentially as long as it's like sort of like they're following medical procedures, like I don't think that somebody can walk in here at 6 months and say to you like, can you get rid of my baby, and you're allowed to do it.
No, but I'm just asking, like, should there be a time limit, like 16 weeks?
I think that is that endangers women too much. So the answer is no. I don't believe so.
So, but that would create a circumstance, be it as rare as it may be, but where there's like an 8-month abortion.
It's conceivable. I mean, certainly in the 8th or 9th month. I mean, here's the thing: in the 8th or 9th month, you can you may find that the child is going to not be viable.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about elective. Like, I'm specifically trying to ask about that.
But here's the danger, though. Like, and this is what I'm talking about. Why you have women who have died in Texas, and there's probably a lot more that we're not aware of, is that imposing these restrictions is not like there's no like bulb that shows up when you say this child is 100% not viable, or that your life is 100% not threatened. Like, where's the threshold? Is it at 20%? If the woman's life is in jeopardy, it's 20%. And this is a vague, a doctor doesn't have like some meter that they put on the the woman and say, oh, okay, your life is at 20%. No. These are vague determinations. And when you impose these type of restrictions on, what invariably happens is women die. Because
I wanted to check Tim's chat to see what they had to say with all this.
In real life, not
and it is not great. I'm guessing this was like a members only chat. But yeah, it went as well. The chat is as sane as I thought they were going to be, which means not at all.
Hypothetical world. In real life, the doctors are afraid of crossing a threshold where they could get imprisoned, or they could lose their license, or conceivably the woman might too. And so I leave it up to a doctor and the patient. I don't know what constitutes even elective. Like, is it elective if there's a 20% chance I'm going to die?
No,
that's not elective.
It's not elective.
What about 5%?
That's not elective.
What about 1%?
Not elective.
Okay, we know that
elective is usually used to describe
0.5%.
I've decided I don't want the baby anymore.
Because we know that there's always a danger of a woman dying in childbirth, and it's above 0. So we're
come on.
No,
we're trying to be reasonable, right? We want to solve the problem. We don't want to just say, oh,
what's the problem?
There are conservatives who believe that if the baby is, well, for many, I don't even believe in IVF, because even a fertilized embryo is life.
What's the problem? I understand that there are religious people who don't like what I do, but what's the problem?
The death of the baby.
Well, I would contend that we're talking about the death of a fetus. And
so the issue is whether someone determines personhood or not is a legal constitutional question that needs to be answered. For instance, in Civil War, they didn't think black people were humans who had civil.
Here's my thought on it. No, it's a cluster of cells. It's not a person. Also, this is insane even in the prospect of third trimester abortions, where, again, as I said before, most of them that happen are due to a health concern about the baby, about like a health concern for the mother's life being at risk. And going back to that, when that happens, most of the time, the babies aren't viable to live afterwards. The babies aren't viable. The fetuses aren't viable. When you put in that restriction, what you aren't putting a restriction on, you're not putting a restriction on whether that fetus is going to be viable or not. What you're putting a restriction on is whether that mother has a chance of, living if something goes wrong with the pregnancy, or dying if something goes wrong with the pregnancy, if that so be the case. That's what you're putting a restriction on. You're putting a restriction on someone's life when they are in dire need of abortion. So by putting that restriction on them, if you put that restriction on abortions and people have complications after 16 weeks with the pregnancy that results in their death, it's at your fault. It's your fault. So that's the thing. You're not necessarily restricting someone's access to abortion as you are doing that, but you're also basically sentencing them to death in that same case.
Rights, and that's clearly the psychotic way to view the world. But you holding the view that an unborn child is or is not an individual who holds a view, whether they are or not, is an unanswered question at the Supreme Court level that I believe sooner or later will be answered. And they may make a determination that the unborn are persons who are.
What do you think?
Man, that's tough. I tend to be traditionally pro-choice. I think that when you have
But here's the thing, that also creates a messy leeway because some people have different concepts of where life begins when it comes to a fetus. Some people believe when it's starts to like develop, the mind starts to develop or something at a certain point. Some people, I think Ben Shapiro believes it starts at conception. So like when you nut in a woman, putting it classy. But like, who's to say that, life doesn't begin just with sperm in general, and if you waste any of that sperm, you are basically performing an abortion. So like nobody can jack off now, because even they like to, because the anti-choice people, the pro-life people, they love to put this definition on where they think life begins. But even in that contingency, they're not all the same. Like some people will say, oh, it's at, I think it's what is it, 9 weeks, 12, 16? I forget exactly when. And even in most of those cases, sometimes you can't even tell if the fetus will be viable. Like that's a very rough point. So yeah, it's very like restricting in that, because like I said, in that time period, it can be difficult to tell if the baby's going to be viable. But when you have like the extreme side of people who believe that conception is the start of birth, that creates a messy road where I guess nobody can have sex unprotected now or jerk off. So yeah, it's weird. You're weird. Like most people understand that when a baby is born, that's when life begins. Like when a baby comes out of the womb, nobody's like, oh well, it's 9 months old now. No, they say, oh, it was born this day. It's 0 years old, 0 years, 0 days, 0 months. Like they understand that's where life begins. That's where everybody understands that. But then you have these pro-life people being like, no, actually my baby's like 4 months old out of the womb, even though I stay on track with how everybody else tracks, the age of a being.
Do you think there should be restrictions on abortion?
100%.
What should those restrictions be?
Time limit for sure, but I don't know. I'm not smart enough to give you a certain amount of time.
But here's the problem: is that when you in practice, that time limit ends up killing women.
Well, you've got a dying baby or a dying woman, and we're trying to figure out how to save them both.
Well, I mean,
So
one is
are if the baby can survive, why?
Oh my god, this is so stupid. Let's just go back and let's see him try to process this.
Holding the view that an unborn child is or is not an individual who holds a view, whether they are or not, is an unanswered question at the Supreme Court level that I believe sooner or later will be answered. And they may make a determination that the unborn are persons who are.
What do you think?
Man, that's tough. I tend to be traditionally pro-choice. I think that when you have...
do you think there should be restrictions on abortion?
100%.
What should those restrictions be?
Time limit for sure, but I don't know. I'm not smart enough to give you a certain amount of time.
But here's the problem: is that when you in practice, that time limit ends up killing women.
Well, you've got a dying baby or a dying woman, and we're trying to figure out how to save them both.
Well, I mean, one is.
But that's the thing, is that like there's plenty of situations in which both can't survive. Like what happens when a baby isn't viable but is past the time limit, and it results in the death of the mother? So what? It's either they both live or they both die, and there's no in between. Like, oh, sorry, your baby's not viable, so you're just gonna have to die. Does that sound reasonable to you, Tim?
Are if the baby can survive, why kill it?
So you're saying viability. So
yeah, viability is huge, and medical technology is rapidly expanding that. But there's still a lot of questions in how we handle it. So my position is that the government can't mandate one person provide their body to another person. However, if a person provides consent in the initial phase, now they have an obligation for a certain time period. So
if you have sex and you get pregnant, you are obligated to carry that baby to term. Is that what you're saying?
I think that I'd be in favor of abortion up to a certain point.
Well, but I don't understand what the logic is there.
Logic is compromise.
Oh, so this is just a question of splitting the baby in half, literally.
Not literally splitting the baby in half. It is.
Yes, that's what he's saying. Also, and I think this is where Sam's going to go with it. He's going to ask about SA and people who get pregnant from SA. Like, okay, does that mean? And this is something that a college student, I think, brought up to, what was his name? That fucking ugly ass guy. That fucking monster of a human being. What's his name? Charlie Kirk. when he did that little like round table, whatever, surrounded episode of Jubilee, where that one girl was just like, "Oh, would you force your 8-year-old daughter to carry a pregnancy that would end up killing her if it was a pregnancy out of, sorry, grape?" And he was like, "Yeah." So that just shows you the morality of Charlie Kirk. But like, I think that's where Sam's gonna go with this.
Can the government tell someone you must provide your body and blood to another person?
And you say they can
So the
up to a
questions-
certain point.
The questions of consent play a role in whether you allow someone and then have an obligation to them based on the requirement. So, for instance, like rape, I 100% exception. Health of the mother.
Okay.
100%
So
exception.
let's take rape.
Yeah. Yeah. The woman can choose
Okay. What establishes rape?
when a person does not consent.
Okay. How rape is a criminal term, right?
Indeed.
So you need to go through the court case.
Perhaps.
Well, I mean, perhaps.
Well-
Like, can I come in and say I was raped, and that's it? All I need to do is say I was raped.
Nope.
Okay. So you need to have a court case.
No, I didn't say that either. There would have to be some degree of.
Well, you keep
education.
telling me what you're not saying, but why don't you just say what you're saying? How do you establish?
gotta calm down.
No, well, how do you establish what if rape is taking place or not?
So there's rape kits, right? And we can check for abrasions, and a woman who was raped certainly would want to get a rape kit done. I'd imagine.
Well, okay. First of all,
If you're
we
asking-
know for a fact
if you're
that a
asking
lot of
for-
hold on. We know for a fact that a lot of women don't seek rape kits for whatever reason because they're afraid to. Okay, so if you don't get a rape kit,
We have responsibilities to ourselves and to others, and sometimes those choices are very difficult to make.
so
If
just
we're
the
talking
existence
about-
of a rape kit will
But
establish.
that's it. Very easy when it is less likely to happen to you, statistically speaking. That's very easy when you're not putting yourself in the shoes of someone who is in that situation. That's the thing. Like, it's very brave for someone to do that, to have their entire life essentially messed up and still actively take the precautions to, do the proper legal procedure. But most people don't, out of like fear, whether it's fear of, for multiple different reasons. I mean, if you just go on the internet of anyone who has made a statement of them being essayed and see the responses to that, and telling me that it's so easy to come out and say, "Oh, I got essayed," or even look at the statistics of how the police respond to that, or how just the legal proceeding in general proceeds to that, despite it occurring.
that rape has happened. Why do we need court cases to establish that rape has
I
happened?
didn't say we did. I said no.
Okay, so
So a medical professional who assesses that a rape has occurred, I believe, is
what if they go in
largely
too many
sufficient.
days after to get a rape kit?
And then there's no evidence of rape taking place?
Yeah.
That would be a restriction.
Okay, so who makes that adjudication?
If a rape took place.
Yeah.
The person administering the rape kit.
So we would put rape kit people who are administering this and look at the evidence. And do you think it's just like completely binary? Do you think like when you get a rape kit, like this person has definitely been raped or this person has definitely not been raped?
I think that we're dealing with something outside of the simplicity of I can go to court, it takes 6 months to a year to figure something out, which means there's a compromise. How can we come to the best determination to make sure that women are not
But that's the thing, is that even your solution to it that you seemingly are proposing is not black or white. It's not definitive. There needs to be, like, yeah, you can go get a rape kit and it can help determine whether or not you were raped, but there's still legal processes that need to happen afterwards. It's not just simple as a rape kit. And in that span of time, you will probably more than likely be like past the statute of limitation, like these restrictions that you want in place. And maybe it'll go on for so long that you'll already have the baby, or maybe you'll already have died. So dumb.
lying, which I assume would be exceedingly rare, and we're actually going after the criminals. I do not think it's fair to put the burden on someone to perform an abortion without actually taking the responsibility of yourself and saying, look, victims have responsibilities, and it's unfortunate that they're victims, but we're trying our best.
So if you
there's-
don't go, so let's say for instance, like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever, and spent any time exploring the psychological and the sort of like social pressures on people to report rape. I mean, but you're basically saying that if you don't go and get a rape kit, it's contingent upon the police department.
That was what I was trying to get to, but I don't think I was making that great of an argument for it, if I'm gonna be honest.
To assess this rape kit. If you go too late,
Is that who's administering the rape kit?
yeah.
It's not a doctor?
No, I mean, they may have medical things.
Well,
but it's
I was talking
basically-
about a doctor. She goes to the doctor. She says, I've been raped. They do a kit, and they say, okay. And then she says, I would not want to have a pregnancy from this.
Now,
They say,
do you
okay.
honestly, like, do you know how this works? It's not like it's a preponderance of the evidence. I mean,
I love how his solution to all this was, oh, you go get a rape kit, but it seems like he doesn't even know how that works. Maybe he doesn't really understand fully what he's talking about and shouldn't be talking about it.
and it's like, so you're
Yeah.
basically saying the doctor gets to decide.
I am. You don't think
whether-
the doctor should be able to decide to give a woman an abortion?
No, I think doctors can decide. Well, I think doctors are responsible for.
This is a compromise. I'm pro-choice, but I recognize that we're not going to live in a society where one side's demanding an extreme, the other side's demanding the
So
other.
you think the rule should be if you get a
God, can you please pick a side of anything? With this wishy-washy crap. Oh, I'm pro-choice, but I think we should have restrictions. Oh, I think people who commit treason should have the death penalty, but oh, I'm also against the death penalty. Jesus Christ.
Doctor makes.
rape case? What if it's somebody?
We're
who's-
talking about edge cases. I
what if
mean, I don't know why you're
15?
getting so much into the edge cases.
Well, I mean,
How often does this even happen?
how often do people go in and get an abortion at 8.5 months because they feel like it?
That's my point.
Yeah, very, very few.
Right. So why are you bringing?
Then why are you trying to argue about it? Because that was your argument. It was like, well, what if this woman just wants to go in and have an abortion at 8.5 months for no reason? Tim,
it up?
Well, because the people who you would create restrictions are going to cause
Exceedingly
problems.
rare and not even an issue.
So then, why would we have any restrictions whatsoever?
Because what do you mean? So that babies at 8 months don't have their lives ended?
Well, I mean, what if there are reasons for it? I mean,
That's then requiring adjudication. But so exceedingly rare, you're arguing an edge case for a dramatic change in policy.
I'm saying dramatic change in policy. There, I think
It's kind of wild that I'm like, women should be able to get abortions, but you're like, yes, but in exceedingly rare circumstances, we should remove all restrictions because sometimes.
Excuse me, I think there's 10 states at least.
but they happen though. They happen. They still happen though, Tim. This is why it gets messy when you bring up restrictions, Tim.
I know you can look this up where there are no restrictions.
I agree. Yeah.
So it's not. This is not some type of like radical change of policy. It exists.
No, this is recent. After the end of Roe v. Wade, these are the restrictions that these changes started happening across the board.
I mean, I can understand
Do
that.
you agree with those states removing restrictions?
Like I say, yes, because I think
That's not Roe v. Wade. That's the end of Roe v.
Oh, I said at least go back to Roe v. Wade.
Didn't Roe v. Wade have a provision on viability? There was an additional case that people don't bring up. That was in the 90s.
The Casey.
Is that what it was? There was a question about viability and whether or not you can end the life.
The court said in Casey it just changed the date in which, or I should say the week in which states could then begin to impose restrictions on that right to get an abortion.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think these other restrictions end up killing.
The overturning of Roe and Casey resulted in states removing restrictions.
Correct. Wait, I'm sorry. Say that again.
The overturning of Roe v. Wade created the legal precedents by which states could begin to remove restrictions.
No. They could. I think they could have done that prior to that. I think they could have done that prior to that.
So the question ultimately is, I'm not going to come down as the supreme judge and just say like it must be, the right is wrong. I say, and I've told Republicans this: if I was a woman that got raped and you told me I had to
have an opinion on it though, like you don't need to be this Supreme Court judge to have an opinion on something. Just stop being so fucking wishy-washy on it. And also, like, I love how he tried to spin it, being like, no, overturning Roe v. Wade was actually a positive thing because it allows you to remove restrictions, but it also allows you to just full-on ban it. Like, I think he was trying to spin that into a bit of a positive.
to have a baby, I'd blow my brains out. Like, there's no fucking way you will tell me that I'm going to, by force, without my consent, give my body to somebody
You are
else.
telling that that woman who got raped.
There is some
that
degree of responsibility.
you have to announce this. You
Yes.
need to follow certain procedures as a victim of a crime, and if you don't, we're going to force you to carry that child to term.
Yes, 100%.
Okay,
There's a responsibility we have as victims of crimes as well. And one of the problems we have in this country is that,
that's an interesting theory.
well, it's true, right? If you're a victim and you want accountability and justice, you
Well,
you have
what
to go to
if you make the determination that I don't want to go through what is involved with getting accountability and justice, but I also don't want to carry my rapist child? In that scenario, the woman is out of luck, according to you.
If you are not,
Yeah, because even Tim himself said, oh, that court proceeding would take like, what, 6 months to a year? At that point, the restrictions aren't there. With the restrictions, you're already past the restriction. And yeah, they could probably open up if it was proven that a rape occurred. But if it happened in a year, that baby's more than likely already born or dead. So either way, you gotta carry that baby for most of the term, or you're carrying it for, till it's born.
not willing to take your responsibilities,
The responsibilities that,
Of victims.
that the rapist has imposed upon you.
indeed, yes.
Okay, so this is
That's insane.
what do you call this? The Rapist in Power Act?
I suppose you'd say that liberals have a view that they have no responsibilities at all. That there's no
I don't feel
requirements.
like I have a responsibility. I certainly don't feel that if I was
not
someone
making
who
an
could be, I am making an
The
argument.
Rapist Responsibility Act is an emotional nonsense.
No, it isn't.
We're talking about a person's responsibility to society.
That is exactly what you're
No, it's
suggesting.
drama
is tantamount.
nonsense.
No, it's not drama
It's
nonsense.
prop clipping.
No, it is not.
Yes, you are. Come
Oh
on.
my God,
I don't
dude.
give a
argument.
He's trying to make
Make
this
an
so
argument.
disingenuous. You said, after saying the most insane thing you could say, that, oh, a woman has a responsibility, can carry a baby after someone rapes her.
say nonsense
The
words like
argument
rape.
is that what you are suggesting is that a woman who is raped has a responsibility that has been bestowed upon them by the rapist. The rapist has chosen you. If I shoot you in the face, I have caused you I have imparted upon you a responsibility. What you're talking about is fascistic. It is
Sam, do you think
disgusting.
that if someone commits a crime against you?
And so I'm sorry I said Rape Empowerment Act and tried to do it in a more satirical way. But what you're talking about is
logic centers are shutting down.
And listen, no.
You're getting overly emotional.
No, I'm not.
You're not speaking logically anymore.
No. What you're doing is you are doing what you always do.
They have
you're
to file
trying to
paperwork
pretend
to get
like you can
accountability.
find something in here, but
You're
it
not
is
talking about the argument
absolutely
anymore.
nonsense. Yes, it is.
You are no longer talking about the issue,
because
nor the law.
everybody sees. Oh, I am definitely talking about it.
Tim's just like, no, I'm not listening. You're not talking about the issue. And it's like, I'm directly talking about the issue. What are you talking about?
Talking about my person, you're doing ad hominems. You've lost it.
No. Here's
Sam,
the point.
let's start with
It's
the
a
law.
debate between you and him. Inherently so. Like, yes, the topic is on abortion, but when you're fucking constantly wishy-washy on every single topic, of course he's gonna fucking bring it up. You're especially wishy-washy on this. You believe there should be restrictions. You believe you're pro-choice. Women should carry the rapist baby. But also, if it was proven to be a rape, then they can get the abortion. What do you believe? Are you a person? Do you actually have thoughts? Or do you just hear things, say things, and then repeat them and just try to come off as this blank slate that can appeal to anybody, but really only appeals to people on the right or people who somehow convince themselves that you're a liberal?
There you go.
Amazing.
You can't even make an argument anymore, can you?
I don't need to, because everybody who's watched this, no. Everybody who's watched this knows that you're saying that a rape victim has a responsibility that has been bestowed upon them by the rapist. It's gross. It's disgusting.
You are having an emotional breakdown right now.
I'm not having an emotional breakdown right now.
Do you think the police
I'm getting
should be,
exercise
you want to wait?
because I'm thinking of my daughter.
Here we go.
I'm thinking of my daughter.
Here it is.
And I'm thinking of the idea that a rapist could force her to do something that
spiraling.
No,
You're spiraling.
No.
You're spiraling.
Tim,
you're not even stopping talking.
Because you just
not even stopping talking.
You never think out anything that you
We're going to say something.
You're
We're going to talk, or are you going to keep just talking about nonsense?
You in front of all of your
Are you going to wait for your prop clipping? You're prop clipping, Sam. You're prop clipping.
I don't even know what that means.
He's like, you're prop clipping. You're prop clipping, Sam. It's so pathetic. Yeah, obviously a man who has a daughter is going to really care about this issue, inherently so. I fucking hate this whole oh, you're getting emotional over this topic. Yeah, we're talking about human beings. We're talking about human beings being forced to carry a pregnancy because some dumbass decided decided to have their way with them without their consent. Yeah, it's going to be an emotional topic. Trying to talk about this in an emotional standpoint is ridiculous. It's so inhuman. It's so fucking gross. But I guess that works well for Tim.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do. You're prop clipping again.
What is prop clipping?
You're not arguing abortion anymore.
What is prop clipping?
You said, Tim, you're full of crap. You're not arguing abortion anymore.
Because
you disgust me. Oh, rape, blah, blah. You stopped arguing.
Saying
you stopped arguing and you started doing performative garbage for the camera.
No,
you want to have a discussion, Sam?
Dude, the best part of this.
You want to have a discussion, or are you going to keep talking?
Tim needs to be slapped. He really does. He needs to be slapped across the face in Minecraft. Someone needs to go in Minecraft, create a little Minecraft version of Tim, and slap him across the face. But because I just fucking hate these people so much. These debate perverts who, the second you act a little bit human, they think you're, acting it up for the camera. They think you're trying to clip farm, or you're getting too emotional because you are a human and you have feelings for other people. You're not this emotionless robot who just feeds in statistics without considering human beings for even a second.
You in knots about the idea that a rapist can force a woman.
Here you go again. Here you go again. You're making things up.
I'm reiterating.
Prop clipping.
I am reiterating.
You're prop clipping.
I am reiterating your
You're getting
position.
overly emotional. You're getting heated.
He's literally trying to talk about the topic at hand, but Tim realizes that what he will say will ruin his entire view on this. So he's just trying to be like, "Oh, you're getting emotional. You're getting upset."
Pointing. You're throwing slurs and name calling. You're
full of slur.
Well, forgive me. You're so full of crap. You disgust me. But
Dude, honestly,
that's a
you want to have a
slur.
discussion? You want to have a discussion or have an emotional breakdown?
You know what? I'm going to continue with the so-called emotional breakdown because honestly, I think
that's right.
No,
Sam.
I honestly.
Let's solve our problems by Sam just freaking out and having emotional breakdowns on camera.
I honestly think that what you do is so damaging.
Oh no!
And this
Here he goes.
whole notion that you would allow
it took 2 hours and 40 minutes for you to break.
Yeah,
you
this
broke.
whole
Sam,
why are you keeping me from talking?
Because you haven't let me talk one time.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Victims of crimes who want accountability have responsibilities.
What if they don't want accountability? What if they don't want to put themselves on the stand and have to point
They
out
don't get
that guy?
accountability.
Okay, but they have to carry the baby, right? According to you.
If they don't want accountability, then this is a.
Then they have to carry the baby.
This is reality.
Say it.
A woman.
Say it. If they
I will say
don't
it as
want
plainly as
accountability,
I can say
they
it
have to
100%.
carry that rapist baby.
If a woman does not want accountability for her rape, she will carry that baby.
She has to.
She has to. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Up to 15 weeks.
That's the prop clip I
Disgusting.
want right
up
there.
to 15 weeks.
I mean, I think we have come to an agreement.
That women can get abortions if they're so choosing, without any restrictions, up to a certain amount of time, and then after viability, would have to.
They don't want to pursue their rapists in public in a public setting, and they don't want to go through
said
that.
That's literally what you just
Sam,
said.
you're having an emotional breakdown. You've stopped listening to what's being said. You started getting angry.
He literally was just
insulting.
about to repeat what Tim said.
You're disgusting. How dare you? This is, and you know
You
what?
don't think
And you know,
saying
Sam,
to
let
me
tell
that
you.
you're prop clipping? I don't know what that means, but
So it's when you stopped arguing abortion, finger pointing and waving your hands and saying,
that's
I tied you in
literally
knots in
what
front.
Tim's trying to do. He's trying to get this little clip of being like, oh, look at Sam. He's getting emotional. So he can like share it on his little spaces. You could tell that's what he's been waiting for because he had that little shitty grin being like, oh, I got you. The lib is triggered. Oh my God, he's such a piece of shit.
In front of the camera.
yes,
And this is why people don't invite you on their show.
I don't give a shit.
I know.
I'll tell you something.
That's why you don't
This-
get invited on shows, 'cause
No, I
you don't care.
care.
I know you don't care. I'm not
I
saying you
don't
do.
care. I honestly, like, this is.
You start the show, I don't want to talk politics. I want to talk about how you said mean things about me before.
Oh yeah, I wanted to get that. Oh wait,
Yeah,
no,
your
not mean
WWE
things.
politics.
No. Listen,
We're talking about how do we effectively have law on abortion. That should be. A woman can do whatever she wants up to 15, 16 weeks, maybe even 22. I don't know what the time limit is. But if the baby is
Yeah,
viable,
he
it has
definitely
to be-
didn't want to talk about politics when he, right after addressing the elephant in the room of why you guys have never done a debate before this, went straight into, the death penalty and whether or not it is something that should or shouldn't exist. That's definitely not him talking about politics.
none
accountability.
of what you're saying is meaningful at all.
That there should be a time restriction on
15, 22, you're just throwing around numbers.
because there's a debate on how long that duration should be. But my position is that pre-viability, I don't know, some say 22, some say
And
26.
my addressing you is that the
Being
restrictions that you're
angry
pushing-
and you're disgusting and emotional breakdown.
yeah.
Like, he can't give it up. Like, he's actively trying to talk about the topic at hand, but he was just like, oh, you have an emotional breakdown.
My emotional breakdown to you is that when you put these restrictions on women, they in practice are impossible to actually execute. And you have shown that by saying that if a woman refuses to go in front of a court,
I never said
if,
that. This is what I said, Sam. For the
if
love
it
of all
doesn't
that is
take
holy.
accountability, what does accountability mean?
A rape kit.
Okay, so if a rape kit,
You're saying I was raped with no.
In a rape kit, it's not like in this binary thing that proves if a rape happened or not. If that's the case, there would be you would not have to have a court case after that, but you do.
No proof and no evidence, and therefore
they've got to go in.
6 months.
They've got to go in within 24 to 36 hours and say to a doctor, "I was raped." And if they don't do that, then they're forced to carry the rapist baby.
Depending on what you want to happen in society, there are things you have to do. Sometimes you may not want to have to do them, but this idea you have that people, what you're proposing is that the state should be
That's
able
so
to.
easy when you're not the one who's been faced with that problem, and will more than likely never have to. Like, that's so easy for you to say, Tim. Like, again, not having empathy, not being able to place himself in another person's shoes, of not feeling comfortable, especially in a society that has a heavy bias against people who do speak up and come out. Not putting himself in those people's shoes and instead being like, yeah, I would do it. I would definitely do it if I was a victim. Like, that's easy for you to say when you're more than likely never going to have to face that and more than likely never had.
Force crimes against people without evidence.
What?
You want accountability, but you do not want
I
to go
don't
through
want accountability. I just don't want this woman to have to carry a rapist baby.
Yeah, this isn't about like putting the rapist to justice. It's about whether or not the woman should carry the rapist baby.
Right, so this is very 5th grade, right? There is a legal system that exists. We have to work within a legal system because we have compromises in a social contract with other people. The idea that I can take action against another person without proper adjudication is...
This isn't... No, he's trying to change the subject real hard right now. Because this has nothing to do with abortion. This is completely different. Because not every essay ends in a pregnancy. What Sam was specifically trying to talk about was pregnancies that result because of an essay. Like, he's just trying to make this seem like, oh, it's just all essay possible. Like, just trying to change it to just essay in general, which I also don't think would work out for him if he wants to go down this route. But we'll see. seems like he's the one who's trying to change the topic and is not even talking about the topic anymore. But yeah, this probably went as smoothly as anybody would think it would go. I'm honestly surprised we even made it through this. I probably won't do more parts of this. Maybe I'll break this up into different parts. Maybe. I'm not gonna like overly. I don't really plan on doing that for the most part. But I think this is where we'll leave it off for now. Maybe, I don't know. It's like this recording is like 1 hour and 45 minutes. It's gonna be a long session, to say the least. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for now.